when I was doing my research about you and from the conversations I've had with people on the podcast surrounding mental health, everyone who's passionate about it has gone through their own mental health struggles, their own journey of mental health and understanding themselves and so on. And for you, what was interesting is that the you were diagnosed with clinical depression, but it came from a place that I didn't expect it to come from, honestly, and which was the feeling of that you didn't belong where you're living now in Toronto in Canada, and that you struggle to connect with people. So, for the people who don't know, and because Dr. Nasser on the episode that you had described, he's a 40 guys. For the people who don't know, he's a psychiatrist with 40 years experience. He's one of the most renowned, I believe, in Cairo, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. He's actually the World Federation for Mental Health president-elect. Like
Oh wow.
he's
Okay.
like one of the most renowned Arab mental health professionals in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing that he said that was super interesting was because go check out the episode, guys. But basically, he got COVID, and he experienced depression himself. And what he said was, even with his 40 years of experience in the in like psychiatry and so on, he didn't understand depression until he went through it himself. No matter how many books he read, no matter all his experience, he didn't understand, how that actually feels to be going through, like to be depressed. So I thought it'd be interesting for you to, if you could just walk us through, Ali, what were you, when you were in that, that phase of your life, what were you thinking about? What were what were the feelings that were coming up, and how did you start addressing that and like making the changes to get to where you are now?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say thank you, Yani, for mentioning this episode. I'll definitely shoot you a link, and it's on Empathy Always Wins, my podcast. I think that it's so important to have these conversations. So thank you for shouting it out. Going back to your question on how does it feel, and really, Yani, walk us through maybe a, a day, or walk us through an experience. I think in very simple terms, it's uh it's something unfathomable in a way that it's the experience that is very different from being lazy. It's when your brain chemicals do not produce enough, endorphins and the chemicals that allow you to function normally, and you start to typically experience high levels of anxiety, which is different from stress. Anxiety is when you overthink everything, from like, what pants am I gonna wear? Is someone gonna see the stain? But like, and you were never this person that cared about anything, and so you overthink everything. You start to worry that I lock my and you can't continue functioning in in that present moment in your day to day because of all the thoughts that cripple your mind.
Mm.
So that it starts typically with that. It starts typically with a roaring sense of يعني, uncertainty around your mind. And when your mind starts to feel whack, like you don't know what's happening inside, it's kind of like crisis mode. It's danger. It's a
Mm.
danger zone. And so you start to really feel depleted, and you start to really feel like you can't pick up phone calls. And so you start to really feel like you can't reply to this person. You start to really feel like you can't put that same amount of energy when you thought that, wow, like, what's going on here? Like, and then you start to feel like it's druggy waking up, and then you start to feel like, you want to live in your own isolated world. And it's not because you want other people to feel like they're not enough. No, it's you just can't give people, because you can't give yourself. And unfortunately, sometimes it gets even more burdensome when people keep hitting you up. Hey, are you okay? Are you okay? And you just, that even pisses you off even more, because you're overthinking that,
Mm.
and that becomes a point of crisis in your mind. Well, what are people thinking? Oh my god! And it's like mental health. Like, I'm supposed to be that strong person, and like it starts to mess you up. And unfortunately, yeah, I just didn't quite understand, because to me, like, I grew up in in Egypt and or in Dubai, and like to be strong is a very different notion
Definition.
than,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a very different definition. Like, what the hell? Like, I'm this is supposed to be easy, and no one would understand it. But I think because of the lack of education we have, and a lot of things that we don't really put into consideration when we are growing up and developing understanding. And a reason I called my show "Empathy Always Wins" is because that's a key skill set that we the as Arab or as just minority community, even Bangladesh, Indian, Pakistani, not just Arab, just anyone who isn't Western, anyone who isn't Caucasian, they don't really understand it much because we're very close to each other. So we're always used to being in other people's and others' business and blah blah blah. Uh, but when we start to think about those questions, well, what if this person is? We start to really develop better emotional intelligence and better leadership skill, and we start to really empower people in a much more sustainable manner. And I think that at our root core, in our Arabic, in our philosophy, or in our religions, or in our whatever, this is there. But culture is very different from religion, and it's
100%.
very important to know that our culture in the Middle East is sometimes a big factor in keeping our mental health a little bit unstable, because sometimes we don't give the space, we don't give people what they need to truly develop into their own selves. Because when we have kids, we don't own them. We, as much as we try to control them, uh, and, parents need to understand, and parenting with influence is much better than parenting with control. And those are all the different topics that I truly uptake and empower, because it's supposed to be aimed at the 18 to 27, 28-year old youth that is growing up and starting to experience a world that is so different to their parents and their and everyone in their family, because the rate of change in society today is so much different than the rate of change in society in our parents' generation. Like I think a day ago I shared something on my Facebook, like all the technologies that used to be, antiques in someone's home are now in a 4 by 5 inch technology in your pocket. Like, what's going on? We never had that many distractions happening. Our minds are not designed for that. So no, like, no shit, we're gonna experience anxiety.
Yeah. Uh, First of all, thanks so much for sharing your story about like the process that you went through and how that actually started to develop and where it came from. I didn't know, just on that small part. How long did was that like phase from when you started like feeling that anxiety and those thoughts about like your shirt or like this or that till like maybe your lowest point? Did it spiral really quickly out of control, or did it take some time, or was it over a long period of time? What would you say?
I would say that definitely 3 years,
Three
for sure.
years.
Yeah, I
Wow.
mean,
Okay.
I've been here for 6 years now, and I've started to only make friends last year. Like,
Wow.
I couldn't actually, merge into society. I mean, and that's the thing. People, I mean, I was just, as I told you off the record, I had a friend over yesterday, and we were watching we were watching a cool movie, and and I was like, dude, you know that like, I've only been able to do this with you, um, only, like, I don't have anything outside of this except for maybe one other friend, and we don't do this. I just do something else with this friend that is much more music related.
Mm,
He was like, really? I was like, yeah, you've been 6 years. And I was telling him that, well, that's exactly why I do Empower, man, because all that I've been through did not allow me to feel like I can have friends. And so that's an illness. I mean, that's an illness. It's just people don't, if I was in hospital, if I was in another place, whatever debilitates you from living an ordinary life, and I know there's no such thing as ordinary, but I mean, by ordinary, I mean by having people that you rely on, close friends. When you meet someone and they tell you, oh, I don't have friends, or I don't rely on people, or I don't have a support system to call if I need any support, then there's something definitely wrong with this person, or
mm,
there's something fundamentally wrong with their beliefs, or not so, something's not going well,
yeah.
because we are meant to wire. So that's exactly what I was going through, and I think that made me realize how important, or why I do what I do. So I think, Yani, if anything, I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, no, it really does, man. And I love the passion that you talk about when you're like speaking about this. I can see it on your face and how you're talking about what you went through, and to get to where you are now is, I commend you, honestly. And anyone who's gone through their own mental health journey and has reached a new phase in their life and is doing the kind of work that you're doing, being an advocate for mental health and an ambassador, I think that's pretty amazing. So congratulations on that, because I know it's not easy.